as if I were being interviewed.
Okay.
And I'm the interviewer and the interviewee.
Yes. Wait, say that again. Yeah, we're good. We're good. Okay. All right. We are live here on Facebook. Hi, how are you? I'm Lori. I'm standing in for Ralph, who's having some technical difficulties. And we are here today with Ellen Goldberg to talk about all things tarot and the upcoming virtual esoteric quest being held through the Open Center. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And even though it is a last minute surprise, Ralph is not with us, but Ralph is my longtime friend, a friend of just about as long as I've been at Open Center, 35 years.
Well, that's a good while.
Oh, we've had many a deep conversation. But today I'd be happy to speak to everyone who is listening to these pre-quest interviews.
Yeah.
About tarot, about how I came to the tarot. These are things Ralph asked me to speak about. And how I came to Open Center and what the quest has meant to me. But I'd like to just say, for those of you who are not familiar with tarot, the tarot, and I have a pack right here, is just a deck of cards. But it's more than that, of course, because as we know from the Orient, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this seeming deck of cards, 78 cards in all, is really almost like an encyclopedia or a compendium of the Western esoteric tradition. These cards are filled with symbols that speak beyond the conscious mind to the subconscious. And through the idea of synchronicity, or meaningful coincidence, we can learn to mix these cards, pull some in response to a very specific question, not fortune telling necessarily. They would prefer to be a guide to you in your own personal evolution, but they will present you with images that are there to make you think. The purpose is to stimulate thought, and the kind of things that occur to you when they show you these images chosen by you and just for you are actually kind of mind-blowing and awesome, because you see how the universe responds.
Now, can I ask a question?
You bet, Lori.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know there are lots of different types of cards. You use a specific card. I know there's the Rider White card. Is that?
And when I teach, and I have my own school, I've been teaching at Open Center for about 35 years. And, but I have my own school, the School of Oracles. It's in Manhattan, except like almost every school now, it's online. And I must say I'm having a wonderful experience with my first deep online class. It's an opportunity I didn't understand, you know, how they say there's a silver lining behind every cloud. And I
totally agree.
For me, the upside of this very difficult time for our world is that it forced me to do something that I had started preparing for like a year before. And getting tutoring in Zoom and doing online classes visually. And so now I have students from all around the world.
That's what I was going to ask. I bet it's broadened your reach, hasn't it?
It's everywhere from next door in Brooklyn and California to Beijing and Moscow and Dubai, and really.
Isn't that incredible? I mean, the Open Center has also experienced that sort of growth too, but I mean, something you wouldn't have expected or otherwise. I mean, it is the silver lining that you mentioned.
Right. Life pushes you in certain directions, and necessity, you know how they say, necessity is the mother of invention and desperation is its father.
Yes.
And so we are in sometimes some desperate straits.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of invention going on right now.
Yes, that is true. So tell me about you use your own cards then, or because we were talking about the symbolism.
Once you learn to read a very basic deck like Rider Waite,
Mm-hmm.
is the most popular deck in the world. And it has been for some time. It's not the original deck, but the tarot is something very special in that it is still evolving. That's why new decks are being made all the time. And you know, if you're already interested in tarot, how many books there are on tarot out there. And I, who did not publish my first book till I was 71, I'm 75 now. So I always think of myself as a late bloomer, but I've been growing and working towards this bloom all my life. But now my first book was on the art of reading the hand, and it's now was voted People's Choice #1 in its field on Amazon and Goodreads. And I'm very proud of it. Now I'm working on a book on the tarot. So it's wonderful for each of us to think of some creative way or some creative project, maybe something you put off because you said, oh, I'll be spending too much time alone, or this requires so much concentration. But in times like this, it's the most wonderful thing we can give ourselves is something of meaning that we have been meaning to do. And it makes you feel kind of, well, more fulfilled and having a richer life. Yeah. I grew into the tarot and palmistry and astrology. I am an astrologer too. And I'm also a psychotherapist. I've had a private practice in Manhattan, although I've just retired from that. But I had a private practice in Manhattan for 33 years. And I'm also a painter. In other words, I am someone who believes in constant learning and constant growth. And there are many ways to have a good life. Absolutely. And one of them is to be a perennial student.
I agree with that totally.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, Lori. I believe the purpose of life is to grow in wisdom and to grow in our ability to love and have an open heart.
Oh, that is, I wish everybody in the world had that philosophy, especially now.
There are many who share that philosophy, and many of us who wonder, what is the purpose of life? And well, it's good to choose one, and that's a very nice one to choose.
Absolutely.
I started out, I would never have known that I would grow up to be an esoteric teacher. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who may be interested in seeing some of my work, about 5 years ago, I made 100 videos for YouTube, and they're on there and they're free, and half of them are on tarot and half are on palmistry, and each is a miniature course, a complete but miniature course in each subject, tarot and in hand reading. So all you have to do is Google me or search me out on YouTube, and you can have one of those courses.
Okay. I'll put the link in after we finish talking so they can.
Oh, that's quite
can have access to it.
Wonderful. I teach also, deep, in-depth courses that go on for 100 hours, different from the little ones on YouTube, but that people can find me through my website, schooloforacles.com. And it's the loveliest thing in the world to me to be able to pass on the knowledge that I have gained. And part of what it means to be a human being is that we share with other people and we do something in our way through kindness to others or sharing wisdom to help our world evolve or to help our fellow man evolve. I started out just, an ordinary girl. And I believe that there are certain things that do happen by fate, and that we are introduced to things or things cross our path. And if we click with them and we take what life has offered us, then life will keep responding, because that's what it did for me. I always loved the mysterious. I always loved fantasy and fairy tales and stories and literature. And I was an inward girl. I had a pretty good childhood, but I had very rough teenage years and not a very good home life. And it forced me to go inward and to be more shy. And many of these things have happened to most of us, you know, trouble with family, trouble with parents, difficult circumstances in life, challenges. And later, these become our sacred wounds. And many of us grow up to be healers. And there is an archetype of the wounded healer. And later, I learned that the children chosen to be shamans in different societies were never taken just from happy family life families or who've been perfect. They all had suffered something, some sort of trauma.
That's interesting.
Physical or emotional or near-death experience, because only someone who has come back from something that deep fit to guide the souls of others. And
that's pretty powerful, and it makes perfect sense.
And, you know, the tarot is meant to be a guide for us. When I discovered the tarot, it took me even a few years to understand what I was really working with. So now I hope to give people a shortcut to go right to it as a guide to your own self-realization.
So how did you how did you come to the tarot? I mean, how did it?
Once I discovered that there was a higher intelligence, I was born into a Jewish family that was not especially religious. And so I never thought very much about it. I knew there was more, mostly because of stories I would read and things like that. But when I was 27, I went to Europe for the first time and probably flew directly from New York to Athens and spent the first few months on Greek islands. And almost instantly, I met someone who taught me the I Ching. Wow. And that I Ching, which I hold in highest regard, this is one of the finest oracles, and that is available to every one of us, and you can learn in an hour and have a friend for life. The minute I threw those coins for the first time, as I'm a coin thrower, not a yarrow stick user, there are a number of ways to use the oracle. The minute I threw those first coins and saw and looked up what that pattern was and saw the message it wanted to give me, my life changed completely. It was one of those moments. Sometimes our growth is very slow, and occasionally there are those, it is dotted with those moments when things just like open wide. And I thought to myself, to say that to me, you would have had to have known me for a long time and to look very deep inside me, because it chose to say something about my brightest, most beautiful side and about some part of me that was darker and shadowy and that I was having problems with. And it gave me both, and it was spot on.
Wow.
Turns out that the next week or 2 weeks later, when I went into Athens for a day by boat, there was someone standing on a street corner selling all his belongings because he wanted to go east. And among them, there on a blanket on the ground, was an I Ching. I got my own copy of the I Ching there.
Oh my gosh.
And for the rest of that 6-month journey, I threw it every day and immersed myself. And at the same time, I had a lovely companion for part of that journey, and he had a copy of Be Here Now. And between the two of us, between Be Here Now, and we're talking long ago, and the I Ching, by the time I came back to New York, I was a different person, and I determined that I would find out what else existed. And it was in that search that I discovered, I was a young social worker then.
I was a social worker too.
Oh, well, hey, hi. Uh, and that was a very good background, because then I decided to be a spiritual social worker, and I started to study everything I could. And in my studies, I found a school called Inner Vision. It doesn't exist anymore, but where they offered beginning courses in everything. And I took everything. And when the teachers at the end of the year were always asked to choose one student to be their assistant the following year to get trained as a teacher, all my teachers chose me.
That's amazing.
That was also another wake up. Oh, I must be good at this.
Yeah.
No, we learned so much about ourselves by reflection and what's reflected back to us. I wanted to choose the tarot teacher. I begged the head of the school for tarot, and she said, I can't, because you love it so much. I have no doubt that you will study it more deeply, but you're not doing so well in palmistry. I said, it's my worst subject. She said, that's why you have to go with the palmistry teacher. And that was the best thing in the world. I became their palmistry teacher. I taught there for a number of years, and I only say thank you, Holy Spirit, for forcing me to do that, because it was the best thing I ever learned. And I also teach palmistry at Open Center. I'll be doing.
Oh, you're doing one coming up.
I have one coming up in November, a two-part, 2 Friday evenings on palmistry. And of course, I've got those 50 videos on YouTube. And next summer, I'll give a 1.5-year course through School of Oracles. It became clear to me at a certain point that I am a servant of the mysteries, and that it is my happy responsibility to send out as many true readers in tarot and palmistry, and as many future teachers as possible.
Why do you think I feel like tarot has gotten very popular recently, and I'm curious what your thinking about that is. Why?
Well, if you look at the oracles that we have, to name a few, of course, I Ching, which comes from about, must be at least 3,000 or 4,000 years old. So it might be from 1500 to 2000 BC. We have the rune stones from around the same time. We have astrology, which must be about 5,000, 6,000 years old, developed by the Persians, who were then the Chaldeans, the great astronomers of the Middle East. We have tarot. I'm sure there are others that I'm forgetting. The hand, how can I forget that? We call it God's roadmap. It changes every time you change. You're up to the minute report on how you're doing and where you're going as of now, so that you can co-create your life with the divine. That also is from the dawn of time. But the tarot, it seems, is what we would call a Johnny-come-lately in the oracle business, because the first decks that we have are from around the time of the Renaissance. The Visconti Schwarze deck, which is, you can see right at the Morgan Library in New York City, is from about the year 1500, late 1400s, right around early 1500s. Beautiful hand-painted cards. But that is only 500 years ago.
Yeah,
this is very recent, and that is because magic is alive and well. and the invention of oracles is alive and well. And tarot is growing. It's enriching. Of course, even though we don't have our first deck since the Renaissance, its roots go back very far and very wide, because we'll see that the four suits of the tarot, the wands, the cups, the swords, and the pentacles, those four magical suits are like the magical implements held in the forearms of the great creator Kali, female aspect of Shiva, the creator and destroyer, bringing forth life and then bringing it back to herself. She carried a cup, a scepter, a wheel, and a dagger. So
I don't think I ever thought of that, but yes,
oh yes, these things go back a very far way, and that in India, people, we're so lucky to be literate, even though there's still an enormous portion of the world illiterate. But at one point, almost everybody was. And in order to teach scripture to people, they made images and showed them on leaves, they had them, or on pieces of leather. They showed the images to the people as they told the story. They arranged these things like stacks of cards. It's amazing. So that the ideas that inform the tarot, the coming together of it, and in the Renaissance time, there was an enormous love of systems that would syncretize, pull together all the existing knowledge. So it is quite natural that these cards would take the closest form to what we have now. And of course, with the invention of the printing press, it became not just that it was for a few wealthy families that would have them made by an artist specifically for them, like the Visconti Schwarze deck, but anyone could have them.
Yeah.
And yes, perhaps it has many uses, and some of them, the lower uses, might be fortune telling. And maybe it was a way for the cards to stay safe, because there was an awful long time when things were destroyed, when the church could put you right at the stake for doing something, especially if it seemed that you wanted to have a personal connection to the divine. Which is what the cards can allow you to have, a personal connection to your own higher self. They're part of the Hermetic tradition, along with alchemy, Kabbalah, astrology, numerology, Platonic, Pythagorean numerology, and all kinds of Hermetic philosophy. These cards are rich with them.
Now you're getting into a lot of the esoteric quest topics. So I want to just parlay a little bit and ask you about your history with, I know you've taught with the Hope Center for over 35 years or 35 years? And you've been involved with the esoteric quests for a long time.
From the very beginning, even before the quests began, while Ralph was still thinking of them, I have such a high regard for Ralph. When the Iron Curtain was lifted, I was the first teacher sent over, or they arranged for me to teach tarot in Prague.
Oh my gosh.
For 2 weeks. And I gave a concentrated 2-week course. And under the blessing of Open Center, who arranged lodging for me. It was a marvelous experience. And Ralph said to me, while you're there, I'd like you to meet up with my friend Boris, who had a center there. And Ralph had been sending money and helping to keep that center alive and going. Because I remember when Ralph would really helping centers in both Russia and in Czech Republic. And he said, I'd like you to check out a little town called Český Krumlov in the south, in Bohemia, where I'd like to put the first quest. And Boris drove me to Český Krumlov, and I immediately felt a connection from my soul as though I had been there before.
Oh, wow.
And it is rare. It was second, it's protected by, I think, is it UNESCO, that it was the second only to Venice in ancient preserved things per square foot. It was like, especially then, it was like stepping back in time. And the next year when we had the quest, because I knew we were coming, I arranged to arrive a week before everyone else, so that I could just have a week to be there and wander the streets and back alleyways and into little deserted gardens. Oh, I still remember the plums that I picked daily off a tree from an old deserted house and garden.
Did you teach at that one, or were you just
everyone I've attended, I taught at, except maybe the one on American, the one which was wonderful to attend that we had right here in New York, right near Woodstock. I think we did it at Menla on, yes, American esotericism. It was fascinating. They're all fascinating. I always find a way, because tarot is such a compendium of things. If our quest is going to be on alchemy, as it was very much in Prague, I can teach tarot and alchemy because it can follow the alchemical process right through to the making of the Philosopher's Stone.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
There is, if it was like at Granada, we had a wonderful space just across the street from the Alhambra. And on the golden age of Spain, when the three religions, the three children of Abraham, the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews, lived in harmony for 700 years and blossomed. And it's when the Zohar was, the Jews felt safe enough to put things down in writing. Why, of course, I teach tarot based on Kabbalah. So there is always a way. And Ralph, in his generosity, has always offered me a place on the bill. And
well, it sounds like you're also going to be participating in the virtual one, which will be quite unique and pretty cool. So tell me about what you're going to be teaching for that course.
Because this is our 25th anniversary of the quest, so much of this particular one will be an overview of themes that are important in one's personal quest. And so I'm going to do my presentation on how to use the visuals of the tarot. Let me take out one or two cards.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you would.
Conscious, and how they represent the stages of one's personal evolution, starting with, here's the Fool, the Holy Innocent, and how that's how we all start out. This is spirit. It's an androgynous figure, actually. And as it's about to enter into incarnation, and what that means, and how we all start out this way. You know, Fool comes from phallus, the Latin, which means bag of wind. And this is the very life breath. One thing that comes up into play with the tarot is the law of correspondence. In fact, it's one of the great laws of Hermeticism, which says, as above, so below, as below, so above, so that there is a correspondence. It's what the ancients used to call the sympathy of all things, or Paracelsus would call the law of similarities. So that even without having parallel development. The 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet correspond to the 22 major cards, the major arcana means secrets, the major secrets of the tarot. And so each one of these from 0 through 21 is a different stage of enlightenment and shows the different things that a seeker must either absorb into themselves, become masterful of, or learn, or stages along the way. Like card number 1 is the magician. And its Hebrew letter, the second letter, we start with Aleph for the fool, the first letter. We line them up right in order, which is about the fiery life breath. So that fool, meaning phallus and bag of wind, goes perfectly with Aleph. Some people will put the fool in different places in the lineup because it's a 0. It can actually go anywhere. Sometimes it's the first, sometimes it's the last, sometimes really it's in between every card because it's like breath, our air. It's everywhere and our life depends on it. And how we then take the very first card, numbered 1, who is ruled by Mercury itself. So this Mercury is Hermes, for whom the Hermetic tradition is named. This is what our Western mystery tradition is, the Hermetic tradition. Its letter, Bet, meaning a house, is called, they all have intelligences. This one is called the transparent intelligence. And right away, they're talking about, here are the 4 suits of the tarot on the table, the wands, cups, swords, and pentacles. And you see he's raised his hand, one hand up and one hand down. And that is for channeling. It's called the transparent intelligence. Right away, we are told it will come through us rather than from us. And how we learn to be receptive, how we learn to give suggestions to our subconscious for growth, how we develop strength, how we are strong enough to withstand when there are difficult times. Here is the tower where false ideas are being knocked right off the top of the tower. Ideas, we have crowned king. The lightning always seems to come from the divine, and things are turned upside down. We're having a kind of tower experience.
I was going to say that seems
and
very appropriate.
The lovely thing is that the card that follows the tower is the card of meditation and stillness and learning truth from within, the card of meditation, the star.
I think that's always been my favorite.
There is something so healing, so peaceful about this card. And what I love about it is that in most of the cards that have a landscape, there is that golden path right up to the mountains, which is the path of attainment. Notice it's undulating, not a peaceful, steady path, but there's a lot of ups and downs in it. But we're all headed towards that higher attainment. But in the star card, there is no path. There is nowhere to go. It's about being where you are completely and taking time to simply be.
What does the bird represent?
The bird, now it's not very well drawn, as you can imagine. It's the scarlet ibis. And if you have ever been in Egypt, you will see those scarlet ibises standing along the Nile. It is sacred to Hermes, right? It is an expert fisher. It has a long beak, and it can hook and it can go and get those fish. We go fishing in the subconscious and in the collective unconscious in meditation, and we pull up our interior truth. And so that's why it's here. The tree actually represents the brain stem and parts of the brain that are influenced by meditation. But the theme of this card is taking your truth from the world of nature and from your interior rather than the world of man. And that is what we learn to do. There are different kinds of meditation, different meditative states. But one of them that is the most powerful, and which I will teach in my section of the quest, is how to use images to stimulate the parts of the mind that we cannot reach through thought alone. In fact, meditation teaches us about ourselves, things we can never learn through thinking, but really by being. But images are one of the best ways to communicate with the subconscious. We get messages nightly from dreams, and dreams are mostly visual. You notice there's a lot more visual than auditory in dreams, although, of course, sometimes we hear some amazing things. But images speak, it's a two-way street. Yeah. The conscious speaks to us nightly through images, and we can choose images to concentrate on and speak back to it and stimulate different parts of ourselves. We can awaken, and by knowing, that's what we'll do in this class, knowing which cards awaken different aspects of the self. You can choose images to meditate on and to let yourself be affected by, and therefore awaken and stimulate these archetypal responses. Archetypal meaning primal patterns that have existed from the dawn of time in different guises, but in almost every culture in the world. And has their version of the fool, the holy innocent, the holy child they have, the priestess, you know, the priest, the hero, the ruler, the warrior, the trickster, the evildoer. There is a pantheon of types that appear everywhere, whether if we are in a small tribe in New Zealand, in a rainforest, or if we are in a fancy penthouse in New York or London, we will see these types that help make the world run, and that have existed always, just adapted to the society that they are in. These cards are filled with what we call archetypal images. And by allowing yourself to gaze at them, the hereditary response from deep in the psyche can awaken them. These are consecrated cards of art. Yeah. And images are just some of the most powerful things. That's why what we choose to watch in movies or choose to watch on television means an awful lot too, because we're stimulating things inside us without knowing it.
That's, I agree very much. So I want to just kind of shift a little bit to the upcoming virtual quest, which is on October 23rd to 27th. It'll all be online. So the first time in its 25-year history. So that's kind of a big deal. Now, from my understanding, because it is virtual, is it able to bring in presenters who may not normally have been able to attend? So I feel like maybe we're getting a wider swath of experts and people who are able to participate and present.
Well, I do not know about that, although one might think that, but you know, we've had the most exquisite presenters always. Oh,
the list is pretty impressive, I have to say. So.
I have been so I feel blessed, and so did so many of the participants. And if anyone is watching this who has been in one of the quests, you know exactly what I mean. The participants are wonderful and have come from all over, and the presenters came from all over. But what we do have, because it's virtual, is the ability to watch those presentations a number of times, because they were so rich. The knowledge you gained, the experience, and was so wonderful that I would have loved to have just been there and replayed it. Maybe just to listen once, just to hear it, and then to go back with a notebook and really take the notes. They were such a formative growth experience for me to attend absolutely every one of them. And not only are the presenters wonderful, but the participants were wonderful. And I'm so glad that Ralph has built into this some periods of time of conviviality.
Right. The happy hours.
Happy hours. And you don't have to be drinking wine or beer just to join. You can just come as you are, and just the vibration and the conversation is enlivening. That was one of the loveliest things, to connect to people who would also take the time to be interested in these matters, because we're a small number relatively in this world.
Well, so that was going to be my next question. I feel like Ralph has there's a group of people who are interested in this, but I think that there are so many more people who don't even know that they can be interested in these topics. And so my question is, how can we attract maybe a younger population, different groups? I mean, lots of people are interested in tarot, but they may not think of it in terms of esotericism, or they may think they love art or philosophy or Nordic culture, but they wouldn't know to be participating in something like this. So how would you appeal to a broader public?
That's a very good question. And I would enlarge that to be not just about tarot,
yes,
but about so many of the topics that will be discussed. I would say that for one thing, we could encourage everyone who loves these things to share with their friends, to suggest websites where we might post, or on Facebook. My current tarot class, the deep, longer class that I'm doing, I have over 70 students from around the world taking it, and I'll ask each of them to share with their friends. Maybe we could get invited on talk shows or podcasts.
Yeah. I've monitored the past few Esoteric Quest Facebook Lives, and I'm just enamored by the wealth of information that you have, that Leonard George had, that Stephen Bass have. I mean, I feel so lucky to be a fly on the wall, and to be able to have access to this and to be able to share it across such a wide swath I feel like I want everyone to know about it. So I think we need to share this with everybody.
Yes, as much as we can. That's a lovely thought.
So, well, I think we are just about out of time, but I have so enjoyed speaking with you. This has been such a delight. And I very much look forward to the quest coming up October 23rd to 27th, and your upcoming workshops at the Open Center. I don't have the dates in front of me right now, but it's on palmistry.
On palmistry, I think on the 13th and the 20th, but it's on the calendar.
It's on the website already as well.
Mid-November, and 1 week later, a little later in the month.
So we're very excited about that, and not to be missed. So thank you so much for your time. And I'm sorry that we had the technical difficulties, which made Ralph not participate, but hopefully he was watching, and I made him proud. So.
Oh, I think you did a lovely job. I'm very happy to meet you.
Well, me too. Thank you so much, and have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everybody. Hope to see you in the West.
Bye.
Bye for now.